Hello, everyone, and welcome to the continuation of our module on How Do I Grow Holistically? This is for our personal development class in grade 12. And at the end of this module, you'll be able to discuss the relationship among physiological, cognitive, psychological, spiritual, and social development to understand your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. You'll be able to evaluate your own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors and show the connection between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in actual life situations. Let me begin by telling you a story. A 16-year-old boy looking out from the train window shouted, "Dad, look! The trees are going behind!" Dad smiled, and a young couple sitting nearby looked at the 16-year-old's childish behavior with pity. Suddenly, he again exclaimed, "Dad, look! The clouds are running with us!" The couple, who are fellow passengers in the train, couldn't resist and said to the old man, "Why don't you take your son to a good doctor?" The old man smiled and said, "I did, and we just came from the hospital. My son was blind from birth. He just got his eyes today." So let us reflect on that very short story that we just heard. How would you have thought, felt, or behaved if, number one, you were the father, you were dad. Number two, you were the son. Or, number three, you were in the shoes of the young couple. Basically, what the story is trying to tell us and what it is trying to teach us is that everyone has a story to tell. We each have our own joys, pains, and experiences that somehow influence or determine how we feel, how we react, how we think, how we behave. And all of us, because we have unique victories, sorrows, sufferings, we will have a unique outlook, a unique take on things. And because of that, we need to be able to respect one another. We have to understand that there are different experiences from which we draw our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So, an important aspect of self-knowledge or knowing other people is also being able to differentiate between our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Although obviously they're very different from one another, what we think and how we feel may not necessarily be the same as how we act or how we behave with others. There are thoughts that are directly expressed in written form, explicitly expressed. Not all emotions may be beneficial to us and to the people whom we relate with. And there are experiences that could lead to positive or negative actions or behaviors on our part. What is important, first and foremost, is we are able to identify these emotions so that we can process them and act accordingly. Today, we will try to understand the area of personal development that concerns our emotions and how we identify these emotions and how we are able to process these emotions so that we can learn from them. We have to remember that all our emotions are valid. We cannot negate how we feel. We cannot discredit the emotions that we experience. But what is important, as I mentioned earlier, is that we are able to first identify them so that we can in turn process them properly and act accordingly. That will be beneficial not just to us but also to the people around us, to the people to whom we relate with. So when we talk about emotional development, especially in adolescence, it's best that we focus on our continuous development. Our emotions will continue to develop across the lifespan, throughout our entire life, through the different stages. But generally, it is in the adolescent stage that, which has been, as I quote, dubbed as a period of storms and stresses. It is in this stage wherein we feel a flurry of emotions, and because of the many developmental changes that we are experiencing in the different areas of development, cognitive, physiological, and others, we somehow tend to be overwhelmed with what we are feeling, that we are not able to process them well, and we are not able to pause and reflect on them first before we act on our emotions. And because we are going through hormonal changes, it is just natural for us to be feeling a flurry of emotions, for our emotions to fluctuate. No? But what is most important is that we are aware of this so that we can make an extra effort to be able to regulate our emotions so that our actions will not affect the relationships that we have with other people and, of course, with ourselves. Moreover, because our brain development, specifically the prefrontal cortex, that is responsible for higher order thinking, because it is still ongoing, it continues to develop as an adolescent. We need to be able to work on this specific skill on how we can practice emotion regulation in order to help us also, in order to prepare us, and that we can also protect the relationships that we have with others. One thing that we need to understand is our own emotional intelligence. Intelligence is not just about academics or kinesthetic, or there are different kinds of intelligence, and emotional intelligence is very important, is very valuable, especially with adolescents, especially in the adolescent stage. What is emotional intelligence? It is the ability that is characterized by consistently being able to recognize and control one's emotions, as well as to manage one's emotions so as to enhance relationships with significant others. It is very important for adolescents to be able to enhance our emotional intelligence, because relationships is very important to us at this stage of our lives, and it will pave the way for our relationships in the future, in the later stages of our personal development. So in the development of our emotional intelligence, there are different tasks involved that we need to be able to go through so that we can process these emotions that we are feeling, that are fluctuating, that we are experiencing. So the first one is being aware of the emotions that we are feeling. Second is identifying these emotions that we are feeling. And third is being able to express these emotions to others, communicating them, especially to those who need to understand, those who need to know what we are feeling. Now, when we communicate with others, we need to be able to determine if the emotions that we're experiencing need to be regulated first so that we can be proactive. The goal in communicating our emotions with others is not just to express them, but in order for us to resolve a certain situation that we are in. So we need to be able to discern if by expressing these emotions, we are improving the situation, and it is for the common good. It is beneficial for us as well. So that is the part wherein we process it and we regulate our emotions, no? So that we can still be able to express what needs to be expressed. And at the same time, we will be able to qualify what is important, what can be more beneficial for everyone involved. In the process of expressing our emotions, one need not be reactive all the time. Instead, we need to be proactive. We need to be able to express what needs to be expressed at the right time, and we need to be able to decipher and discern if the situation calls for us to express the emotions that we are feeling, or if we need to pause for a while, wait find an alternative for us to be able to express what we felt or process what we felt, so that we too won't come out frustrated or burdened. Basically, what we are trying to say is the first emotions that we feel may not necessarily be what we need to express. Our initial reaction to certain situations, to certain experiences, may not be what we need to say or what we need to share in every situation. We also need to be able to think through our initial reactions. That is why reflection, pausing, breathing, taking deep breaths, especially when the emotions are very high. That is why this is also very important, so that we are able to determine first if the initial reactions that we had is beneficial to the situation. That is why we need to remember that although emotions are generally neutral, they're neither good nor bad. How we react to these emotions can create a positive or negative effect to the relationships that we are in, to the situation that we find ourselves in. That is why, again, it is important that we are able to process them before we act. Okay, so think, reflect before we act. Always remember that feelings may be fleeting. They may dissipate, okay, or they may also enhance. Tensions may rise, and in some situations, because there are emotions are too high, emotions are very intense, they may override how we think, how to behave accordingly as well, because of the intensity of our emotions. And in these kinds of situations, we may not be able to predict what we will do, what will be the outcome of our behavior, if there will be consequences, if our actions will elicit consequences. That's why, again, we should be able to practice the identification and regulation of our emotions. So at the same time, feelings can also be subjective. They can be based on our own opinions, how we react to certain things. Again, as we discussed earlier, this can be based on our history, what we may have experienced in the past that other people may not have experienced as well, similarly, which is why we cannot also assume that they understand what we are feeling or what we are going through. So again, because of the uniqueness of each individual, we are being called to be more discerning, to be more reflective, and to be more aware of our situation, so that we can mature and take each experience as a learning experience and develop to become more responsible members of society, more responsible individuals. So again, the first thing that we should do when it comes to emotional identification and regulation is first to pay attention to your own feeling. Am I feeling anything? A lot of people will say, okay, so when you are asked, what do you feel? How did you feel? And we don't bother to pause and think about the answer to that question. Automatically, we just say nothing. I don't feel anything. We feel neutral about it. But there must be something that you are feeling at that specific moment, because after you were asked, you react suddenly. No, you either react negatively to certain people who may have been involved in that situation. So first, pay attention to what you are feeling. Are you feeling anything? Okay. And then second is to identify that feeling that you are feeling at the moment. Identify and think about what caused it. What could have triggered that feeling that you're experiencing at the moment. After that, you'll be able to regulate that emotion and decide on an appropriate response. Okay, regulate meaning you'll be able to determine if this is something that you need to act on, or if this is something that you should just reflect on, or pray about, or take some deep breaths before you take action. No? So that's what you do when you regulate. So those 3 steps when you identify for emotional identification and regulation is, first, to acknowledge and accept that you are feeling something, pay attention to that. Second, identify whatever it is that you are feeling. And third, regulate that emotion, regulate that feeling, and decide on how you will behave. How will you act accordingly? Okay? Well, how will you respond to that emotion that you are experiencing at the moment? We may not get it at first. We may not immediately be able to identify our feelings. That's why it will take a lot of practice. So we need to get that into our consciousness so that we can practice it every time we are confronted with a certain emotion or feeling that might throw us off, or might take us by surprise. No, so at least because we are able to practice this emotional identification and regulation process, this processing, no, it will come natural to us eventually. So it takes lots of practice. We may not be able to, again, identify it immediately. That's why we need to reflect on the things that we're experiencing, maybe at the end of the day. If you were not able to do it during the day, at the end of the day, go back and think about what happened, what you experienced, and if you did anything at that specific moment, or if not, how could you have done it better, or what could you have done if you did not do anything about it, no? And having that experience of thinking, reflecting on it will also help you become a better critical thinker, and will help you have a better approach to things, no? To situations that you will find yourself in the future. And what does regulating one's feelings do to you? How will you benefit from regulating your feelings? You'll be able to develop empathy. Empathy refers to the ability to read and understand other people's emotions. And this is very important in social relations. In your relationships, no? If you're able to widen your horizon, no? You're able to consider other people's experiences. You will be able to have deeper and more meaningful relationships because you can go beyond your own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. You can be more considerate of others. You can put yourself in their shoes. That is what you mean when you say empathizing with them. You can develop this by practicing emotional regulation, no? And eventually you'll have better relationships, and you'll have a better time in managing also your own feelings, your own thoughts, and it will come natural to you to process how you're feeling and how you face specific situations in the future. So what can happen if you are not able to pay attention to identify and regulate your emotion? You won't be able to express it properly. You will have a hard time communicating it with others. And if you keep all of these emotions bottled up inside of you, you will eventually feel anxiety. You will feel yourself drowning in this sea of emotions that you are not able to understand because in the first place, you did not identify that they were there. So it is always good practice to be able to reflect and think about whatever it is that you are feeling, how you react to things, how you respond to things, so that you can process them, so that you can have a better understanding of yourself, what you are going through, and eventually have a better understanding of how you will relate with other people as well. So in closing, let me read from the book by Tanael, Lactao, and Golo on personal development, which is our reference for this lecture. If you are aware of your own emotions, it will also be easier for you to seek appropriate help or emotional support. Some emotions can be so overwhelming that you will need the help of a different mindset or perspective. from a more mature person. Knowing your own feelings will lead you to recognize your own limitations. Some emotions and memories can be traumatic. Memories and accompanying emotions need to be processed and may require professional help. You will also need discernment in choosing the most appropriate person to approach. So, having practice will not give us the solution to all of the problems or situations or issues that we may face in the future, but it will give us a good chance at being able to process them and knowing what to do after, how to respond, how to behave, how to act accordingly. And if that means helping others, helping yourself, or seeking additional help, more professional help from others, then so be it. At least you were able to go through that process and you'll be able to manage your emotions. You won't react erratically to things and you won't be impulsive. And eventually, that will help you in your relationships, as we have said, no? And it will give you a better chance at keeping more meaningful relationships in the future. It will give you more opportunities to grow and to develop, because people will not have a hard time relating with you, and you will not have a hard time also relating with others.